abroad. I'm really happy to welcome you all for today's lecture, which is 34th lecture as part of our monthly lecture series. In this series, our attempt has been to get to know our Roma brothers and sisters in a better way because Romas in different parts of the world have their different issues, different problems, different challenges. With this lecture, we try to understand their issues and problems in the countries where they are residing, and also to know about them, how different they are from other Romas in other countries. It could be because Romas, when they left India almost a millennium ago, they went through different routes and settled in different parts of the world over a period of time. Language, which is very important in any community. So Romas also, when they left India, they had a particular language which they knew. I, depending on from which part of India they traveled to and they migrated. It could be Punjabi, it could be Sanskrit, it could be Central Indian languages. And then any person who travels abroad, he picks up languages from different parts of the world, wherever he resides. So I'm sure Romani language, which exists now, has words from has picked from various languages, maybe from Iran, maybe from Armenia, maybe from Georgia, maybe from Balkans, Romania, Bulgaria. So these words now have become a part of the Romani language. What I understand that Romani language has various dialects. So there must be some differences between the various dialects, but the basic things will be existing. Basic things which is common to all the dialects which exist in the Europe or other parts of the world. It is what is important is to preserve and promote this language, which if it had not been done would have got extinct and it could have been left only orally, which it existed for many years. Now, to promote and preserve this, UNESCO and other organizations, which I understand Croatia started first, to make 5th November as the Romani Language Day, which has been recognized by the UNESCO also, which shows that the efforts are on to preserve this and promote this language and to ensure that in certain countries where there are large number of Romanis living, this becomes part of their curriculum, part of their education system. And as I understand that this language has been given a recognition as a minority language in some of the European countries. So today we are going to talk about this particular topic about language. And the topic of today's lecture is Romani in contact with Finnish and other Nordic languages. Nordic languages are also not the same, like Finnish and Swedish or Norway. Languages have a lot of differences because I had served in Sweden and I know that Sweden and Finnish was far apart. Swedish had some roots from the German, but Finnish was totally different. So it will be interesting to know how the Nordic have influenced Romani or vice versa. So we are very lucky to have a speaker among us who is a prominent academician in Finland, and he is a lecturer in the University of Helsinki on the subject of Romani language and culture. That's Dr. Kimmo Granqvist. So we are very happy to have him with us to throw light on this particular subject and educate us about the influence of Nordic languages on the Romani language. Before we move forward, I'll request Jamir Anwar, who is the research scholar of the Center for Roma Studies and Culture Relations, to introduce our speaker and also to talk about the topic of the day. Thank you. Jamir, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, sir. And welcome you all to the Zoom room for attending the 34th lecture of the lecture series on the theme of Romani language in contact with the Finnish and other Nordic languages. Our today's speaker is Dr. Kimmo Granqvist. He's the eminent philologist and he's a senior lecturer, as sir mentioned, that in Romani language and culture at the University of Helsinki, Finland. And he's also an adjunct professor in modern Greek language and general linguistics. Dr. Kimmo is also pioneer in developing language technological tools for Romani language. And I believe that his contribution is remarkable to, uh, especially for the incorporation of Romani language in Google platform. So I think he's one of the uh, pioneering figure in developing the technological tools for the Romani language. He has published extensively on a Finnish Romani and he also coordinated the several projects dealing with the structure, dialectology, and history of Romani language. He he holds PhD in modern Greek from Stockholm University, and he also conducted and carried out the numerous research works on sociolinguistics and Romani literature and the inclusion of Roma community in the mainstream, as well as Romani education in the Nordic countries. So the subject of today's discussion seeks to get around to the innovation, preservation, development, and loss of Romani language when Roma arrived at Nordic countries, especially the Finland, Sweden, Denmark, and Norway. So, as already our chairperson, Ambassador Sajdeva sir, mentioned about the impact because the Roma migrated from one place to another place. They undertook the perennial migration from one continent to another continent. So the impact is very heavy on the Romani language. But first, I would attempt to straighten out the historical account of the Roma in Nordic countries. Emergence of Roma in Sweden dates back to the beginning of the 16th century, and more specifically in 1512, as pointed out by the gypsy lorist Finn Arthur Thesleff. As you may be aware that the Sweden and Finland were one nation for more than 600 years until 1809, when Finland became an autonomous Grand Duchy of the Russian Empire until its independence in 1917. Likewise, the Denmark also comprised Norway until 1815, whereupon the Sweden and Norway formed a union till 1905. So, as the history of Nordic countries is partly interlinked, so are the Romani policies and the situation of Romani people in these countries. So, according to estimate, there are over 13,000 Romani people living in Finland, whereas 65,000 Roma live in Sweden. But according to some other estimate, the number goes up to 100,000. So they speak Finnish Kalo, the language, which is spoken by Romani groups in Sweden and Finland. I think the 1/3 of the Finnish Roma speak the Kalo dialect, and that's the dialect belongs to the northern and northwestern dialect of the Romani language family. Kalo, that language is also spoken in Spain by a Spanish Roma as well as the Portuguese Roma, uh, Portuguese Romani ethnic group. So we have the expert today, and he will shed the light on that means the impact and the loss of the language, loss of the features of the Romani language. As we know that since the departure of Roma from India in the first quarter of 11th century, they have encountered and interacted with the speakers of numerous other languages, indeed, all of which have left their mark on Romani language, whether it's the Greek or Armenian, Persian, or Slavic, or wherever they went to, whether German, French, and all. So that is quite naturally, Finnish Roma has been heavily also impacted by the Finnish language. So Dr. Kimmo, being an expert of Nordic language, Greek and Romani language, will shed a new light to the field of Romani linguistics. And I believe that he will address also the um, issues like the Kalo language, the distinct feature of Romani language, which is the also the distinct feature of Indian languages, especially the aspirated sounds like th, k. These are the distinctive sounds of Indian languages as well as the Romani language. So in Nordic countries, the Roma lost this aspirated sound, and they still not able to discriminate between the aspirated sound and non-aspirated sounds like pa, pa, like that. And there is also the challenge before the Romani language and the Romani linguists and the philologists that Kalo language is now on the verge of being extinct. So without going further, we are very much interested in listening to our eminent speaker today. So I request our chairperson to proceed this lecture, sir. Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
And thank
First
you
of
very
all,
Jamir. Thank you very much, Jamir. Now, without saying anything more, I'll request our speaker to take the floor. So the floor is yours, Dr. Kimmo Granqvist. Please go ahead.
thanks. Many thanks for the first of all for the kind invitation, and also the very good and extensive introduction to me and introducing me. Actually, I'm going to speak about Romani in the Nordic countries, and I was thinking to begin with the beginning saying something about the Roma in the Nordic countries, then go to the Romani language. I don't know how much you know about the Romani language, but I will try to do this quite quickly. Then speak about Romani in the Nordic countries, then jump to the Finnish Romani, and depending on how much there's time, speak about Finnish Romani in contact, and then end with conclusions. So, as was said, well, the estimates of the Roma are very difficult to make for the various reasons. But the Council of Europe has estimated that there should be somewhere between 50 and 100,000 Roma and travelers or residents in Sweden, Finland, Norway, and Denmark. Well, in Europe, there should be some 11 million Roma and 6 billion in the European Union. So, as was said, the largest Romani population in the Nordic countries is in Sweden. But there are huge differences between the minimum estimates and the maximum estimates. There's a difference of 30,000 Roma. And that's, of course, that has to do with the how censuses are made in the Nordic countries. Well, and that the legislation prohibits statistics on ethnic basis also. And it's also a question how the Roma identify themselves as everyone in the entire world. Well, so there is in Finland, well, we have minimum estimate 10,000 and maximum of 12,000, but there are many varying estimates. In Norway, there's a huge difference between the minimum and maximum. It's 10,000. The difference is more than 10,000 Roma actually between the estimates, and Denmark between 1,000 and 4,000 Roma. But the average actually is 73,600 Roma. in entire Nordic countries. It's not a very big Romani community compared to some, for instance, some Central European countries which are estimated to have 100,000 to 500,000 Roma, as in Slovakia, for instance. So there are, well, Sweden has very many Romani groups. It's been said that more than 20 Romani dialects should be spoken in Sweden. There are the first group was the Swedish travelers or resande, which arrived in Sweden or in the 16th century, as was mentioned. But then during the 19th century, Sweden received Kalderas and Lovara, and also some early speakers, and also a number of Finnish Kale migrated to Sweden since the 1950s, 1960s. So I would say there are lots of different. There's a huge diversity of Romani groups in Sweden. In fact, it's definitely shown in the photo. I'm showing here, depicting that was actually Romani mother tongue teacher class I taught in Sweden. So there are. We will start with Sweden. The Swedish travelers, of course, were the first one to arrive in 1512. And in the 19th century, Sweden received Lach-Roma or Kalderas and so on, and then thereafter Finnish Roma since the 1950s or 60s, when the passport freedom was and then actually from 1960s and 1970s, a lot of Roma originated from France, Spain, Poland, Russia, and Bulgaria and Yugoslavia came to Sweden, and there was a final large-scale migration to Sweden in the 1990s as an outcome of the Balkan troubles, and of course, and later also of course the new migrant Roma from Romania and Bulgaria mainly. So there's a huge, as I said, a huge diversity of different Roma communities in Sweden. So Finland again has a much smaller Romani community, maybe 10,000 to 12,000. The Finnish Kale are the majority. It's far more homogeneous Romani community than in Sweden. They, of course, they are descendants of the Swedish travelers, and they have been in Finland since the 16th century. Actually have migrated in small groups during since the 16th century. Many arrived in the 18th century, and then Finland received also an unknown number of Roma as refugees of the Yugoslav wars, and there have been also some European Union mobile Roma, especially from Romania and Bulgaria. Some of whom have settled actually in Finland, and then again, Norway and then Denmark have far smaller Romani communities. In Norway, they are mostly travelers. Then there is a small minority of Lach Roma. And Denmark again has a small Romani population, mainly from Western Balkans. That's a question. Denmark actually says that they don't have Roma are not a traditional minority in Denmark because they expelled their Roma actually during the course of the history. So now the Danish Roma nowadays have migrated from Balkans. So if you think about again the Romani language, I don't know how, maybe you know, but it belongs to the Indo-Iranian group of the Indo-Iranian subfamily, Indo-European familiar languages, and it's one of the Indic languages spoken outside India. Actually, by groups that originally migrated from the Indian subcontinent, and well, it was spoken in Europe. Only in Europe, actually, since the medieval times. But of course, currently, if you look currently, the Roma Iberia, they have migrated to the Americas and elsewhere. Well, some scholars speak about 80 Romani dialects, but it's actually very difficult to enumerate the dialects of Romani. For instance, because it's hard to define what is a dialect. There are different kind of models how the Romani dialects have been classified according to a genetic model, for instance, by Peter Backer, Norbert Boretsky and Igla. And then again, a competing geographical diffusion model has been proposed by Jaron Matras in 2002 and 2005, actually. And there's a kind of, nevertheless, this kind of consensus classification grid that differentiates about 4 or 5 principal divisions among dialect groups. We speak of Balkan Romani, Vlach Romani. These interestingly geographically overlap, because both dialect groups actually exist in the Balkans. Then there's Central Romani, which is spoken actually mostly in Hungary, Slovakia, and Czech Republic. And then there's a huge area of northern dialects divided in northwestern and northeastern dialects. Actually, no, then we can know in Sweden and Norway, the travelers or resande preserve to some extent a kind of para-Romani variety referred to as Scando-Romani. Para-Romani is a term that refers to linguistic varieties that incorporate the lexicon of Romani, but the morphosyntactic grammar or morphosyntactic frame of some main languages. And in case of Scando-Romani, the morphosyntactic frame of Swedish or Norwegian. So it's a language that uses basically Swedish or Norwegian grammar, but words from Swedish or Romani-based words. Well, Finnish kale, again, as was mentioned, is used in Finland and Sweden, mostly in Finland, but that is seriously endangered, while there are attempts to revitalize it. What I call again variant dialects. These are dialects spoken by other groups than the travelers and the Finnish kale. That actually covers most of the Roma living in the Nordic countries. These are dialects that are similar to the dialects of the regions from which the migrant originated. And and actually, well, the Romani competence varies between the Romani groups and generous individual speakers. These migrant dialects include from Erli or Arli, Gurbet, Kalderash, Lovari, Polska Roma. And in Norway, well, there's a Vlach dialect which is called Romanes. So Arli is a dialect that is basically spoken in the former Yugoslavian countries and partly Bulgaria. Gurbet is also used typically in the Balkans, former Yugoslavia areas, and Kalderash again originate from Romania, and Lovari basically from Hungary. Polska Roma is self-evident that refers to Polish Roma. And what is characteristic of Romani then is that most Roma are multilingual by the time they reach adulthood. And hence, many migrant Roma actually are competent in Romani dialects, national language, and minority languages of their countries of origin. So they may, for instance, speak Albanian, Czech, Finnish, Polish, Serbian, Slovak, or Turkish, and variety is spoken in the host countries. And also because Roma are multilingual, they are used to incorporating lexical items and phrases from their respective second languages in Romani discourse. That's why also there are there's a lot of lexical borrowing and borrowing on grammatical patterns from majority languages or actually or languages, minority languages used by the Roma or alongside Romani. Also one consequence of the Roma being multilingual is that language mixing phenomena, such as code switching, are inherent in the interaction of Roma. One rarely hears somebody speaking Romani without any kind of code switching. That maybe can be found in textbooks, but rarely in natural speech. And also typical to Romani is that it's a means of oral face-to-face interaction. It's used primarily for interaction with family members, friends, and acquaintances, rather than, for instance, with authorities or any kind of taking any kind of official matters. It's an emblem of identity. In many cases, also it's a boundary marker that distinguishes the Roma from non-Roma. And in the Nordic countries, for instance, Finnish Kale and Scando-Romani also have had functions as kind of secret languages for discrete in-group communication. And on the other hand, and partly contrary to the secret language functions and the functions as an identity marker, have been new mobilities and transnational networks, including social media, that have opened new domains of interaction. There are, and also actually all kinds of public use, which Romani has actually received lately, but as part of actually a kind of functional expansion since the 1970s. And this has led to increased institutional use of Romani in education, religious activities, and some authorities' work, and civil society. While the use of Romani in media, in broadcast, digital or print media has increased, but it's still very limited. And that applies to all the Nordic countries. In some cases, there are top-down kind of codification efforts by national authorities, which are ongoing. Finland has, for instance, its Romani Language Board, which actually works under the Ministry of Education and Culture. And Sweden has also its own national språkråd, that the Finnish Language Council has also its own organization that works on standardization or codification of Romani. While interestingly, the Romani communities show tendencies to safeguard the spoken or vernacular Romani varieties. They, at least in Finland, they seem to resist the codification or standardization efforts. They have hard time accepting the so-called official written standard Romani. There's a lot of debate about it. They say they feel it's strange to the Roma because they are not used to seeing Romani as in written form, and they prefer their own spoken language with all its variation and actually and even code switching and phenomena and so on. However, it's important to see that Romani is in most Nordic countries protected by national legislation and European treaties such as the European Charter for Regional and Minority Languages. I say here most Nordic countries because, for instance, Denmark, for instance, hasn't ratified the European Charter because they say that Roma are not traditional minority there. While in Sweden and Norway, Romani is an official minority language, and Finland also has has ratified a charter for Romani. Iceland, which I haven't much spoken about, has a very small Romani community, but nevertheless there are some Roma in Iceland too. But Iceland, of course, hasn't ratified any charters for Romani. And I don't know about Icelandic legislation if they say something about Romani as a minority language. So then I was thinking to jump to Finnish Romani. I would actually like to have 5 minutes if you have any questions on it now, if that's okay for the. Or shall I continue and shall we take the questions after the lesson? What do you think?
That will be better. You can continue and we may have questions, remarks afterwards.
Okay, thank you. So Finnish Romani belongs to the Northwestern dialect group as together with Sinti. Or we can speak about the meta group of Northern Romani dialects, according to Peter Backer, 1999. And it shares conservative features and innovation that characterize even other Northern Romani dialects. However, Finland is in a way geographically isolated because it's far away from the innovation center of this dialect group, which is in the German-speaking areas of Northwestern Europe. And also this is also affected by the history because Finland was first, as was mentioned, until 1809, a part of the Swedish kingdom, and then and thereafter a part of the Russian Empire. So it has been in a way, and there's the sea in between, the Baltic Sea in there in between also, a kind of natural border. So this has led to that many northern innovations, which has taken place in Sinti, for instance, are not found, or they are late attested in Finnish Romani. And on the other hand, it has its own characteristics, own nature, because of changes induced by contact with Finnish. And there are innovations also that are specific to Finnish Romani. Then on the other hand, we can speak about a kind of language shift among the Roma during the 19th century because probably the true mother tongue of the Finnish Roma has been since the end of the 20th century Finnish in most cases. That's actually said by Arthur Teslev, who was referred to. He wrote that in 1899. And it's typical also, it is that it's attrited. Attrition is attrited, and the speakers permit a huge degree of variation, which we can sometimes say that every speaker has his own grammar of Finnish Romani. But the dialects differ hugely from each other. And it's mostly an oral language of the Roma community. It's used within family, and according to Henry Hedman, 2004, a secret language too. We can see this data is from Henry Hedman's report 2009, and actually it indicates that the degree of good insights in Romani are very rare in the younger speaker groups, while and the same actually applies also to satisfactory insights. While basically only the elderly Roma tend to have excellent insights into Romani. These are based on the kind of self-evaluation of the Roma. They have been asked to evaluate their own language skills. And that's where they have ended up, in fact. So also another thing that should be pointed out is that if you look at the figure 2 here, and the home languages of Roma families in Finland, there are no, according to Hedman's data, there are no Roma families that only speak Romani at home. More than half of the Roma families speak only Finnish. Then there's a group that speaks Romani and Finnish both. But that's far less than the families that speak only Finnish as a whole at home. So it has a quite late and limited written usage. We have, well, while there are some signs of written usage of Romani by the Roma from the 19th century, most written usage, in fact, originates from the 1970s, when the first books written by Roma in Romani started to become published. And of course, also the functional expansion has been late and limited, because we can say that it started in the 1970s, when kind of public official usage of Romani in teaching and spiritual contexts really began. And then lastly, well, it's codification. It's late and it progresses, in fact, slowly. There's a kind of Romani language board has been the official language codification kind of organ since 1997. While the codification is still ongoing, we don't have kind of full codified form of, or a full official codified form of Finnish Romani yet. While we are kind of quasi-official codified form exists, that's the form I have been using in my textbooks and in my Romani grammar from 2011 and 2012, which has been, in a way, being kind of basis of a norm. And then on the other hand, because the language the degree of usage of Romani in Finland is very low, it's little used among the Roma. And there's little control of the language use, which means that, for instance, the elderly Roma who know Romani well, they very often they don't actually do any remark if somebody is speaking Romani wrong, I could say. They don't. All flowers may actually flourish, I could say. All the variation is all the degree of variation is accepted within the Roman community. And that has of course led into a rapid language change, which can be seen especially as the increasing Finnish influence in the both lexical, phonological, and actually in the grammar, structural influence, but also as language internal changes in Romani, loss of, for instance, internal positions, which used to exist historically in Finnish Romani. They are well documented. We can say that Finnish Romani, as it was used in the 19th century, was fairly similar to Sindhi, for instance, but thereafter it has kind of changed under Finnish influence into a language that is in a way symbiotic with Finnish. We can speak later on about that. And then I jump over these slides about grammar. On the other hand, I will go to speak about language contact in Finnish Romani. How much time do I have actually?
You have around 15 to 20 minutes.
Okay, thank you. I will see what I will have. Okay, so there are several layers of historical contact languages of Finnish Romani. They are common to Northern Romani. Iranian languages, Armenia, Byzantine Greek that had a strong influence of all Romani dialects, even Zargari, which is currently spoken in Iran. Slavonic languages, actually I have skipped here Romanian, Hungarian, Middle Low German, Middle High German. Their influence on Finnish Romani has been mostly lexical. But then the recent and current contact languages are Scandinavian language, which has actually given lexicon to Finnish Romani. Well, they include Danish, late Old Swedish, and Swedish, modern Swedish, mostly, and then of course Finnish, because the Finnish has had influence on Finnish Romani since the 16th century, actually, since the arrival of the Roma in Finland. And we have evidence of that since Ganander's study on Finnish Romani in 1780. That already incorporated some Finnish influence. And we know that the Finnish Roma mostly lost the active knowledge of Swedish by the end of the 19th century. That was stated by Teslev in 1899. But the contact of Finnish Roma was re-established and increased again with Swedish along with the migration of many Roma to Sweden since the 1960s. This, however, is interesting because in Finland we don't have any visible modern contact influences with Sweden, while we have those influences are visible in Finnish Romani spoken in Sweden. And if you think about the contact with Germanic languages, well, we can see the historical contact languages have contributed some 65% of the lexicon, but some 40% of the lexicon, almost 35%, is actually of Germanic origin, different Germanic languages, and Finnish. And there are some vowels U, Ö, and E are actually borrowed with loan words from Scandinavian Germanic languages. So also some phonological principles, especially the connection with stress and quantity, is borrowed from Germanic languages. That stressed syllables tend to be heavy. And then if you look at contact with Finnish, well, we know that Finnish loanwords have been documented in Romani since Ganander. I have wrong here. Here it should be 1978, not 79. Anyway, so most of them are nouns and verbs. Interestingly, there are very few adjectives borrowed from Finnish. That's quite striking. In fact. And on the other hand, if you look at word tokens per language and word class in dominant Finnish Romani speech, we can see here that if I read it correctly, the conjunctions tend to be borrowed from Finnish and applies to particles and adverbs. Led to lesser degree nouns and verbs. So because we can see that the Finnish Romani has kind of conjunction and a particle system which coincides with Finnish. Then it's a question then why Finnish Romani is more prone to borrow from Swedish than Finnish. that's something we have tried to study, why there are so little Finnish borrowings. One reason to this is, well, we have said that this is because Romani has been kind of secret language, and Finnish use of Finnish loanwords would make it easier for the main population to understand. But on the other hand, I think that one reason might be that Finnish has been the dominant language of the Finnish Roma, and they rather code switch to Finnish than borrow from Finnish, or borrow Finnish words to Romani. The phonology, Finnish Romani phonology, on the other hand, has been strongly influenced by Finnish phonology. There are a number of phonological rules or phenomena which are actually adopted from Finnish, from the earliest, starting the earliest documentations of Finnish Romani we have in the end of the 18th century. Here are listed some of them. Interestingly, even Finnish has a kind of vowel harmony, which involves groups of back vowels and front vowels, so that back vowels and front vowels are not allowed to co-occur in the same word, same lexical item. And that has been partly adapted to Romani. Actually, we have evidence since the 1830 of that phenomenon. And if you think on the other hand, morphology, well, it's I divided here actually according to typology by Jaron Matras 2007. I've divided to method replication and pattern replication. Method replication it actually means borrowing of morphological morphemes basically, and that is mostly late and rare in Finnish Romani. On the other hand, there's a pattern replication which is borrowing kind of it means borrowing, in fact, a structure, borrowing abstract structures or patterns, and that's highly common in Finnish Romani. There are numerous examples of that. And on the other, if you think of method replication, well, interestingly and strikingly, given the language universals of language borrowing and hierarchies of borrowing, well, inflectional morphology is lately and fairly rarely borrowed from Finnish, but derivational morphology is even less borrowed from Finnish. That's virtually unattested, actually. And then I have here some examples from method replication and borrowing of inflectional morphology from Finnish. Well, this shows, in fact, that shows that there have been all the time since the mid 19th century borrowing of noun inflection and endings, noun inflection endings, in fact, from Finnish. And also, actually, from the end of the second half of the 20th century, we have also examples of Finnish verbal endings used in Romani forms. Unbound morphemes are more frequently borrowed from Finnish, including a negation particle, which Finnish has, and the negation verbs. Modals and auxiliaries are highly frequently borrowed from Finnish since the second half of the 20th century. And then I have some examples, but I don't. Maybe I'm going to skip them because that requires almost knowledge that you can know Finnish to understand them. On the other hand, this is Derivation is very rarely borrowed, as I said. Here are a couple of examples which I'm going to skip. There's actually compounding. Compounding is very rare in Finnish Romani. There are some compounds formed according to the Finnish models which are listed here. So on the other hand, pattern replication that's a kind of that's very frequent in Finnish Romani, and some Finnish patterns have become obligatory parts of the Finnish Romani grammar, such as case licensing artificial verbs, and this means which case actually follows some verbs and positions, and then the verbal system was reconstructed during the 18th and 19th centuries, according to more or less according to a Finnish model. And same applies to new analytical past tenses, which were partly followed Finnish model, and analytical passive constructions which followed Finnish models, and interestingly there was a Finnish Romani, as most Romani dialects, used to be a preposition language, while Finnish is a postposition language. It has postpositions that trigger genitive case. So Finnish Romani also started using postpositions. This took place in the 18th and 19th century. We have examples of postpositions instead of prepositions, according to the Finnish model. So I will now conclude this. Well, there are up to 50 to 100,000 Roman travelers in the Nordic countries. And Romani is it's an Indo-Aryan language, and some scholars speak about 60 dialects, but it's very hard to mention, say what is a dialect. So enumerating the dialects is a very hard task. In Sweden, normally this Scando-Romani is used. It's called Romani in Norway, and Finnish Kale is used in Finland and Sweden, but it's very seriously endangered. There are a lot of migrant dialects spoken, especially in Sweden, including Arli and Erli, Gurbet, Kaldera, Slovari, Polska Roma. And in Norway, there's a kind of Vlach dialect used called Romanes. And most Roma are bilingual. Actually, maybe except for just small children, actually. Romani is typically and historically a means of oral face-to-face interaction. It can be an emblem of identity and a boundary marker, a secret language, and there has been a late and limited functional expansion in the 1970s. And in most Nordic countries, Romani is protected by national legislation and European treaties. I think I will end here. No. Okay, I won't say anything about this, so I think I will conclude here. Here, because this is just a conclusion of the contact language. Seems that it concludes what I have said about language contact. So I thank you. I will say thank you here.
Thank you
And
very
time
much,
for
Dr. Kimmo, and now the floor is open for remarks, questions, and answers. I will first start like Dr. Kimmo. When two Romanis meet, they are coming from different parts. And when they start the conversation, can one say that what dialect he's speaking? Are they able to understand each other? And do they know that which dialect?
I could say that. I could say so that that depends on geographical destination or the countries of origin. Finnish Roma, for instance, have really hard time understanding basically any other Romani groups, especially, but it's almost it's very hard for them to understand, for instance, Balkan Romani. And I don't know. Welcome might be better to say about, for instance, in the Swedish case, how well, for instance, the Polska Roma can understand, for instance, Balkan Roma. Maybe Velko can say that rather better than I can.
But in your school textbooks, are there a lot of standardized Roma words, or they vary from country to country?
Well, I think there are typically there are national standards of Romani. That are based on Romani dialect speakers spoken in different countries in Europe, rather than kind of international standardized Romani. I know that there have been attempts to kind of create kind of international Romani, but I think that hasn't succeeded now. The area, the European Roma Institute for Arts and Culture, are doing some efforts to create an international Romani, but that's highly ongoing and new.
Thank you. So anyone with a question or a comment, please, all are welcome.
I
Yeah, Jamil.
I would like to ask Dr. Kimmo, do you find that the historical Romani resident in the Nordic countries who lost the Romanes completely, and the post-World War II migrant in the Nordic countries, they uh, they preserve or they speak the Romanes, or does the Romani language has been confined to only means the customary affairs? So what is your view, as well as is there any policy, as you mentioned about the European policy to for the protections and preservation of the Romani language, as well as UNESCO also in the introductions our chairperson pointed out. So is there any means national policy to standardize, revive, and preserve the Romani language in Nordic countries? Because as the report says, the Kalo is endangered language now.
Yes, yes.
So is there any initiative by the government or the autonomous body or civil society organizations in the Nordic countries, especially in Finland and Sweden, to revive and to preserve the Romani language? How they can promote even the Romani language among the Romani populations?
Yes, yes. First of all, well, Sweden has established the Romani kind of the språklitter within the Swedish Language Council, a kind of group, kind of organization that supports the revitalization and use of Romani in Sweden. Also, there's some teaching of Romani at Södertörn University, and also there's a school teaching organized in comprehensive schools in Sweden. In Finland again, well, there's the Romani is Romani. There's the Romani Language Board that takes care of the formal codification of Romani under the Ministry of Education and Culture. Then actually there's currently until 2030 an ongoing Romani language revitalization program. Well, mostly currently funded by a private foundation. And Romani language and culture has been a kind of a university teaching subject at the University of Helsinki since 2012. 2012. So it's been taught at the university. It's also been taught at some comprehensive schools in Finland. And there's a kind of formal revitalization project, revitalization program for it. That's what is done by the state authorities actually in Sweden and Finland. In Norway, it's less is done, and in Sweden, but also the Romani community, of course, is smaller. Did that answer to your question, or? I should also tell that the situations of individual Romani dialects used, for instance, in Sweden, where there are maybe more than 20 dialects used, varies a lot, because some of the especially Balkan Romani dialects in Sweden are, I would say, they are vital. While for instance, Finnish Romani and the traveler language are more or less actually at least seriously endangered in both, and this applies, of course, to Finland too. That the Finnish Romani is seriously endangered.
Anyone with any question or remarks? I don't see anyone raising his hand.
I'd like to thank Mr. Granqvist for his very interesting and detailed report. So for me, it's very interesting. So I'm not sure that maybe you know some facts. One time I found some mentions in all the publications before Russian Revolution, in the publications of the 19th century, about some ties in Russian Roma living in the northwestern regions of Russia with Finnish Roma just at the borders with Finland, which at that time, it was at that time part of Russian Empire. And as far as I understand, there were some intermarriages between them, and then migrations of Russian Roma to Finland. Do you know something about that?
Are you referring maybe to the Karelian Roma, or are you referring to the Estonian Laiuse Roma and Finnish Roma?
I'm sorry. So you want to say? Do you mean that?
When you speak about connections between Russian Roma and Finnish Roma, are you referring maybe to some Karelian Roma, or Roma in St. Petersburg and Finnish Roma, or are you referring to Estonian Roma and Finnish Roma?
Okay, and another question is, so we know some things about Finnish Roma migrated or maybe remained at their originated territories after the annexion of some St. Petersburg regions. We know about that. But the other questions, I don't understand very well whether Karelian Roma, which...
Well, I mean, yes.
Before that, are the connection with those Roma from Finland, or these are two different groups?
Well, actually, they are. I don't actually know know very much about those Romani groups. I haven't actually studied them. It's something I have never actually thought about. I have also read about that there should have been there may have been some connections between the Finnish Roma and Russian Roma, which would have been natural also, if you think about, especially as Finland was a part of the Russian Empire. And
yeah, it's not very clear. Yeah, thank you.
But that's something I really don't know much about.
So if there are no more questions or remarks, then should we conclude the session? So thank you very much, Dr. Kimmo, for a very educative lecture. This has really helped us to know the language which is currently spoken or used by Romas in the Scandinavian countries and its influence on the Romani language. And you had touched more on the Finnish side and how it has impacted or has the loan words which have been used. And this is always useful to know to know how the borrowed words are being used and how it is helping the citizens or the residents in those countries. Thank you very much, and
Thank
we
you.
look
Thank you
forward
for
to
thank you for the kind invitation.
we look forward to see you all in our coming lectures. Thank you everyone for their participation. As you all know that we have this monthly lecture in the last week of every month. So we hope that you will join us, and that encourages us to continue this lecture series. And this has been going on for 34 months, and we wish to continue it forever. Thank you very much. Namaste.
Thank you.
With this, we close the.
Thanks a lot.
Namaste, Lakshmi. Namaste.
Thank you. Hello, Naziri. How are you?
Hello,
Thank
hello,
you.
hello.
Hello, Mariana ji. I'll talk to you.
Mariana ji, hello, Miranda.
And Chipian. Hi, Chipian. Hello.
Hi. Yes, Lashurgis Aurange. Nice to seeing you, everybody. Bless us. Thank you for the invitation, Zimmer, and all of you. And very nice presentation for Dr. Kimmo Granqvist.
Thank you. See you.
Oh,
See you to our next lecture. Thank you.
Thank you.
Divlisa.
Thank you.